Welcome to another edition of the Tom Green Podcast. Now, usually I would end the podcast right now for a little while because Detroit's out of the playoffs, but years past I promised that I was going to bring you some playoff previews, and this time I am following through with that. So, without further ado, we are bringing in our guest, and we brought him in for the Michigan-Wisconsin preview, but he told me whether it was on or off air that he was actually not a Wisconsin man. In fact, he was big into the pride and joy of Illinois. He is bearing down as the playoffs start. He is Nick Osen. Nick, I'm surprised you have survived the Wisconsinites' threats there with the Bears making the playoffs and Green Bay not.
You know what? The Bears have struggled for the last few years so much, Tom. A lot of my Packers fans that are friends, they're actually pretty happy for me, pretty supportive. Some of them won't give the Bears the love they deserve, but you know what? That's fine. They're still playing. Packers are sitting at home, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Oh, definitely. It's always a pleasure to talk to Mr. Osen here. Now, of course, you had seen my meme, the meme that I sent you earlier today, and it was Rodgers and the Bose commercial, and it says apparently the headphones block off the playoffs as well. It's a little shot at the Packers there. So
Very nice. Very well done.
Oh, of course, because people know that public enemy number one for me in the NFL is not Chicago and is not Minnesota. It's Aaron Rodgers all day.
As it is for Bears fans as well, certainly.
So you can tell I've kind of got the Bears mentality. I just wear a Lions cap instead. So that being said,
I hope you'll be cheering for him.
We will see once we preview the game. So as he is slightly time constrained, but enough time to have us on the show, we're going to dig right into our playoff previews. Our first one, Saturday afternoon, we got Indy and Houston. And I tell you, when you see NFL on ABC, it reminds me of when I was like in second or third grade watching Monday Night Football on ABC and my dad forcing me to go to bed at the end of the first quarter because, of course, me being on Eastern Time, I got to get up early. So does that pretty much remind you of those times, too, when football's on ABC?
You bet. The old days with Chris Berman as a headliner on ABC as well.
What? Chris Berman, right? So, the Swami says, Indy and Houston, what does the Osen say about Indy and Houston, this game?
So I'm pretty excited about all the games. I think this one could go either way. I love what Frank Reich and Andrew Luck have done with the Colts after that terrible start, and the Texans got super hot as well. I actually think that the Colts are just playing better right now. I love Deshaun Watson, but I trust Andrew Luck a little more. The Colts defense is vastly improved. The offensive line is. And I'm not too scared of Houston at home. I think that Indy's a little more balanced in terms of the run game as well. So I think that this might be one of the best games this weekend. I think they all could be pretty good. But I actually like the Colts in this one. I think it could be fairly high scoring in the mid to late 20s, at least compared to the other games this weekend. But I like Indy going into Houston and knocking off the Texans like they did a couple weeks ago, Tom.
Very interesting. Usually with Houston, to start the year when I do all my NFL picks, I always have Houston going 8-8, Houston winning all their home games and losing all their road games. Well, starting 0-3 this year, Houston did not look good at all, but then they rolled off a big winning streak to finish at 11-5, I believe. And as for Indy, 1-5 start, but finishing 10-6. So you got to say that the Colts are a hotter team right now. The defense has vastly improved because usually with Peyton Manning, now with Andrew Luck, but under Peyton Manning, as his forehead grew, the defense shrunk, seemingly. But the defense has actually been better. And how funny, had Frank Reich not gone for it on fourth down against Houston in the game in Indy, and if the game ended in a tie, this game would be in Indianapolis. Isn't it weird how little plays here and there have just changed the entire course of the NFL season?
It really is, especially that early in the season. But you know what? At the time, I liked the call. I mean, he was going for the win. You know, you don't play not to lose. You don't play to tie. And I think it instilled in his guys how aggressive he is and how much he wants to win right now. And he's right up there with Chicago's Coach Nagy for a possible Coach of the Year this year.
Yeah, and in retrospect, I do like the call. As our buddy Herman Edwards said, you play to win the game. If you're not going to play to win, then retire. Just retire. So at the time, yes, I like the going for it, but in retrospect, it would have been like, oh man, this game was in Indianapolis. Back to the game. If it's in Houston, I know you're not intimidated by Houston, but I got to take the Texans at home. And seemingly every year that the Texans have played this home game, and of course at 4:25 on Saturday, because that's when Houston plays their home playoff game, as seemingly it always is. Give me Houston 31-17. I think the defense shows up in that game, but I do think that Indy has seemingly the best chance of winning on the road.
Out of all the teams this weekend?
Honestly, yes, and it's because of Baltimore's defense, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes.
Yeah, no, I like that. I would say them or Seattle. I like a lot of individuals in Houston's defense, especially in the front seven, but I think that their back line, at least in terms of safety and corners, getting up there in age with guys like Kareem Jackson, and I don't trust them quite as much, especially against Andrew Luck. So I'm going to take the Colts 28-24.
Alrighty. And of course, you don't have to remind Vincent Smith about Jadeveon Clowney like we did in 2012 or 2014.
Yeah, that is very true.
So we know how Houston's defense is, but of course, AFC South matchups are, as I've said before, the toughest to pick in football.
Yeah, they are probably, right up there with maybe NFC East matchups. I would agree.
And we're going to reach an NFC East team right now with our next preview, Seattle and Dallas. Now, last year, because this is the first podcast of 2019. Jeez, time flies. But in week 4 of this season, Dallas went up to Seattle and, as most teams do, lost in Seattle. So this rematch, I would think this rematch favors Dallas. What do you think?
I totally agree. Dallas has been pretty hot, as they usually are in November and December. They've made a point of running the football, which you need to do in the playoffs, have some balance. That trade ended up, going very well for them with getting Amari Cooper for the first-round pick, and Seattle hasn't been great on the road. So I like Dallas. I like what they're doing. I think that they're probably a little more complete just because they've got a number one receiver, a clear number one running back, one of the best in the league, and their defense looks really solid with pass rush, guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, and in the back with a corner like Byron Jones. So, it's going to be tough to stop Russ, especially when he's on the run. Again, I think we've got a great slate of competitive games, but I like Dallas. I think this will be a little more low scoring, probably about 24-17 Dallas.
Yeah, two big keys to Dallas's success. One, of course, being Amari Cooper with the first-round draft pick being traded to them. Which, side note, I posted a meme a couple of weeks ago with Gruden's face, and it said, "Got any more of them first-round draft picks?" Because that's what Gruden right now is semi-hoarding, and hopefully it works out for them as they hired Mike Mayock from NFL Network. So you basically are, I guess you can say like Patrick Star from SpongeBob, let's take NFL Network and push it to somewhere else. Maybe that's what John Gruden is thinking. But back to Seattle and Dallas. As you can tell, this is an entertaining show. Going back to Seattle and Dallas, Amari Cooper being a big piece to that offense, as seemingly their number one wide receiver before him was Cole Beasley, and he was, I guess, seemingly better at making rap tracks than being the top receiver. Now that he can focus back on making his rap tracks, being the number two guy, Amari has done well in that offense. So has Zeke. Dak, of course, can run well. Screen the ball to Zeke, throw it to Amari. And the defense, two big stars on defense. One, Chris Richard. If had they not brought in Chris Richard, Marinelli would be running this defense, and perhaps they would still have the burnt toast that they used to have at corner. And second, Leighton Vander Esch, Rookie of the Year, in my opinion, on defense. That guy took over for Sean Lee, and it seemed as if Sean Lee didn't leave, because Vander Esch has done very well on the defensive line, as well as DeMarcus Lawrence. So the defense showed that they are one of the top units in the NFL, and they showed that against New Orleans on Thursday night. Give me Dallas in this.
We didn't even mention the, probably heart and soul of that defense, Jalen Smith.
Yes.
Linebacker out of Notre Dame.
And what a story that is.
Talent all over.
Definitely. And what a story that Jalen Smith has been, because I remember seeing him tear his knee against Ohio State, and it seemed like his career could very well be over. But he's worked hard, came back, and has been a huge, huge defensive unit for that team. Give me Dallas in this game. I'm going to say 17-10. Low scoring. If Dallas can stop the run, they can win this game, because Seattle has pretty much been a run-oriented offense, whether it be with Chris Carson or Rashard Penny or even Russell Wilson. Doug Baldwin has gotten the ball every so often, and that's how Seattle wins this game, actually, is if they can get the ball to Lockett and Baldwin and beat Dallas's secondary, then Seattle could win this game. But give me Dallas in this one. Zeke runs for 110. Carson and Penny combined for 55. I think Dallas is going to really stop the run. Watch out for Leighton Vander Esch, like I said. And 17-10, Dallas wins this game.
Yeah, so we agree on Dallas. I don't think it'll be quite that low scoring. I think Zeke might have to run for a little bit more if Dallas is going to control the ball. But you're right, their run defense looks awesome, and that'll likely be a grinded-out kind of game in Jerry World on Saturday night.
Jerry's World! That just came to my mind, just like Elmo's World in Sesame Street. So, Dallas 17, Seattle 10. You say Dallas 24, Seattle 17. Moving on to Sunday. Moving on to Sunday afternoon's games. This one, who would have thought in week 9 when they made the change, or week 9 or 10 when they made the change from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson, that the Ravens would have won the AFC North and would be hosting a team that probably deserves a home playoff game. Oh, wait, they play all their games on the road, the Chargers.
You know what? That's a good point. I thought it was the right move at the time, just with how electrifying Lamar Jackson is with the football, how stale Baltimore's offense has gotten. But, yeah, I didn't think they'd win the division. I didn't think Pittsburgh would falter as they did. So, again, this one could be a toss-up. I think that LA is the more complete team, and they've also been very successful on the road. But I love Baltimore's defense, and Lamar is fast enough to get past LA's defenders like Bosa, Ingram, and so on. I think that he'll have to throw a little bit more. This one might be the toughest for me to pick, but I probably like the home favorite, Baltimore, in like a 24-21 type game where it maybe goes down to the last couple minutes and a game-winning kick from Justin Tucker.
Let's make sure Tucker actually makes the kick, because now in my head I've got the Justin Tucker face when he missed the extra point to lose the game a few weeks ago against New Orleans. Oh, hopefully if that doesn't happen, then Baltimore should be able to win this game. The Chargers are prepared for the road, as I said, playing at the StubHub Center, and now I don't know what the name of the name of the place is now that there was new naming rights. I'd seen that from Shefty on Twitter, but besides the point, playing at StubHub Center felt like playing on the road. And so the Chargers, I think, are the most ready road team, but like I said, I think Indy is the team that's most likely to win. But Baltimore has just been red hot with changing of the guard from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson. And if you've ever seen on Twitter, the backwards question mark I've seen in a tweet is supposed to mean a rhetorical question. I've seen that tweet retweeted and somebody asking, is Joe Flacco elite? Backwards question mark. So we'll find out if that's the case if Joe Flacco moves to another team. But Lamar Jackson has done very well running the ball and throwing. They're gonna have to work hard against this Charger defense with Joey Bosa and Corey Liuget, who is legit. Like I said, Corey Liuget is legit, if you know what I mean. I'm actually gonna go Chargers in this game because of the body of work they've had all season. Baltimore is hot, and the hot team wins in the playoffs. So if I'm gonna get one wrong, it's gonna be this one. Give me the Chargers. Same score, actually, 24-21. Badgley gets things working, and perhaps maybe just one offside by Baltimore to end this game, unlike the Steelers. Which I'll also add, if you've heard the podcast before, sometimes my mom and grandma ask me, why don't you ever like watching soap operas? Well, first I say, first I'm a guy, so I don't watch that. But two, I do watch soap operas. Just watch the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, ouch.
Burns, we're coming in hot on the Tom Green podcast. As always. Now previewing your game. The big one. The Super Bowl champs barely sneaking into the playoffs, but because they have Nick Foles, they snuck in against the Bears.
And the Eagles got in because of the Bears as well. Don't forget that.
That's true. Yes, they had a very interesting. Yeah.
I don't know how I truly felt about that decision. I mean, I love going for the win, and it's tough to beat a team 3 times, or to have to play them 3 times. If
right.
The Bears were to host the Vikings this weekend instead of the Eagles, but man, I'm a little worried. The Eagles are hot. They are the defending champs. They are pretty talented. They're tough, battle-tested. I'm still going to take the Bears. I'll come up with a score in a minute.
Sure.
But, yeah, I mean, I think the Bears have to do 2 big things to take care of Philly at home. I think that they've got to control the time of possession, which means keeping up this run game with my man Jordan Howard and sprinkling some Tariq Cohen, as they have been in this, late fall, early winter part of the schedule, and I think they need to get pressure on Nick Foles because there is nobody throwing a better deep ball right now. You guys like Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar. You got Zach Ertz down the seam. If the Bears can't do that, that will be an issue. They're luckily pretty healthy, especially on the defensive front, and they're likely to get receivers Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel back. So, I mean, it's a similar score. I don't think it's going to be, that high scoring, and it's not going to be easy. Midwest in, what are we now, January. But I will take my Chicago Bears at home in a tough, at least 3.5 quarters, 24-17 Chicago.
So, yes, like you had said, a similar score. We had seen in December that the Bears' defense is elite. Maybe not 85 elite, but very close to it. The Monsters of the Midway Millennial Edition, if you want to call it that. If you saw the memes that I had sent to you over text, I had sent 2 memes to this guy, and I'll post them on my Facebook and Twitter after I post this show. One of them was the Khalil Mack trade, as portrayed by Patrick and SpongeBob. Hey, SpongeBob, you got change for a quarter? Yeah, doom, doom, doom. Here you go, as a huge pile of cash in Khalil Mack. And another one is the SpongeBob episode where he's working alone at night. He's wiping down plates. Who's there? When quarterbacks see Khalil Mack on the schedule. And then it has the thing swiping down Mack. Ah!
Oh, boy.
You can tell I'm crazy sometimes. But besides the point, that is how Nick Foles is going to be feeling in Chicago on Sunday afternoon. The Bears fans are going to be excited that playoff football is back at Soldier Field, and perhaps I hope to see a Mike Ditka sighting in the house, as that would be something else. Him smoking his cigar on the sidelines while Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen smoke the Philly defense.
Hey, I like that. I like that one, man.
If LeGarrette Blount was still on Philly, I'd be saying they'd be smoking the Philly blunts. But hey, that's even a form of cigar. So there you go. He'll be smoking a Philly blunt on the sidelines as Howard and Cohen are smoking the Philly defense. As you can tell, things are very, very laid back here on the Tom Green Show. If you don't like humor, then this is not the show for you. So, let's see.
That's right.
Besides the point, I do think that Foles can air the ball around to Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Zach Ertz. If the Bears can contain that, and the Bears can get the running game going, as well as a touchdown pass to Taylor Gabriel and or Allen Robinson, or wait, maybe even Trey Burton, because that's been the Swiss Army knife of this offense, I think, has been Trey Burton, blocking tight end and has caught a couple touchdown passes every now and then. So, give me Burton beating the Eagles, 27-13. Let's see. Trubisky throws a touchdown pass to Trey Burton to end the half, and that ends up being the game-winning touchdown. But of course, the Bears shut out the Eagles in the second half. Bold prediction.
No, I like it, dude. I can see that too. You might even be a little more confident than I am, just because I'm nervous. I haven't had a playoff game like this for a while, but I'm excited, man. I think it's going to be a great weekend, and I think it'll be capped off with the Bears winning and headed to LA next week to face the Rams.
The rematch of Bears-Rams. So, before we end the show, like I'd said, I had actually said this on the Connecting Sports Fans and Writers show, or Twitter, that we just might throw in a little Bama-Clemson preview, and we have enough time to cover that. So, before we actually preview the game, I'll ask you, so far this bowl season, now that we only have one game left, has it helped or hurt the argument for an 8-team playoff?
That is a very good question. Honestly, it's hard to say that it helped it, just because of how badly at times teams like Notre Dame and even Oklahoma in the first half looked. But then again, you're not going to have a 2-team playoff. So in that case, I think that there is still the need to expand the playoffs, because I think it would have been pretty cool to see a team like Ohio State or a healthy UCF just playing against some of the, SEC heavyweights. And I don't really know how it would hurt, as long as these leaders of the committee and these teams actually want to participate in this, relatively new playoff system. So I think it's tough either way, Tom, but I do think it needs to be done, and I think it'd be good for the sport.
Yeah, I think right now it actually has kind of hurt the argument for an expanded playoff, but it's helped the fact that perhaps teams like a UCF or a Boise State might be able to get in at some point, because the narrative of that is, oh, don't put UCF in, they'll get blown out. Well, Notre Dame was in, and they got blown out. So now that kind of really helps that perspective, in my opinion. I want to see the 8-team playoff, because I want to see all the conference champions get in with a group of 5 and 2 at-larges. Now, of course, the argument against that, when the podcast I did with Gray in the podcast I did with Gray, the podcast I guested on Charles Kangas, the Kangas man, we had said that perhaps you might see a Northwestern or a Pitt get in that really doesn't deserve it. So perhaps that's a conversation we could have at a different time, because I know you're time constrained. But besides the point, I wanted to cover that at least in depth. And now we go to Bama and Clemson. So tell me who wins this game.
I think it's going to be an awesome championship game for the 4th year in a row. I mean, even when semifinal games have been bad, all the championship games have been awesome, especially the last 3. So we've got Clemson, Alabama for the 3rd time out of 4 years. I like Trevor Lawrence. I love Clemson's defense in that front 7. But, I mean, the thing is, Alabama's got NFL talent all over the defense. They've got all-American receivers, deep running backs, and, of course, one of the best college quarterbacks I have ever seen in Tua Tagovailoa. So I think this game is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be pulling for the Tigers, but I think that Bama wins it again, man. I'll probably take them. I think it's going to be relatively high scoring. We're going to say, for college mid-level, I guess, 28-31, Alabama takes it.
Alrighty, and well, really the big stat that I have for this game is that Alabama has lost exactly 1 game in every season since 2011. Exactly how many games have they lost this year?
None.
With that stat, I'm going to pick Clemson to be your national champion. Now, I'm not going to just say that. I'll go in depth slightly, and that is, Brett Venables is a great defensive coach. I think that perhaps even Michigan, they shouldn't. Now, I shouldn't say they should take Brett Venables, but I should say that Michigan should really watch Clemson's tapes in the big games, because that's how they should prepare for the big games, is my reaction to the Michigan loss to Florida. But going back to Alabama-Clemson, I think Clemson can stop Tagovailoa in the running game. They're the team that's been Alabama's thorn on their side. And of course, Bama's beaten them twice still. But something's telling me that Clemson's going to win this game. Perhaps, maybe like 2 years ago, a pick play touchdown pass to Hunter Renfrow to basically end the game and win it for Clemson 37-31. Yeah, give me the Tigers. I something's telling me they're going to win it this time. Now, if Bama wins, well, so be it. Then Saban's the best coach since sliced bread, and he probably still is if he loses. But give me the Tigers.
Yeah, I just have a hard time going against Bama.
We're going with Bama. We was a little muffled there, but we got that. So, that's, I guess, with the muffling, that should tell me. Anything else you have to add to this wonderful Tom Green podcast?
Thanks again for having me, Tom. Bear down.
Bear down, Chicago Bears. He is Nick Osen, works for Wisconsin Sports, but is a huge Bears fan. And this has been the Tom Green podcast.